Well, good evening, and welcome to the second edition of the Fireside Chats, sponsored by the Merchants and Drovers Tavern Museum Association. Tonight, we've got a very interesting talk for you. You're going to learn some things that I'm sure you were not familiar with. We're going to be talking about a project that should benefit the entire community and maybe all of Union County and maybe even into the state. Our guest tonight is Pastor Marti Robinson from the Ebenezer A.M.E. Church here in Rahway, second oldest congregation that remains in the city. And he'll have a lot of information for us about himself and this project. Please remember that at the end of the conversation, we're going to have a time for questions and answers. So if you think of something that you'd like to ask either Pastor Robinson or myself about the history of the project or the history of the church or anything regarding the history of the town, you'll have an opportunity to do that. And now I'd like to introduce Pastor Robinson. And if you would, tell us something about yourself and your journey here to Rahway, New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Shipley. First of all, before I tell the world about myself, I want to thank you personally for this opportunity to share a little bit about the oldest standing school or colored school, or school, I should say, in Rahway, Union County, and more than likely the state of New Jersey. Before we get into that, I want to thank you again for this opportunity, as well as the entire staff here, the dream team, I call it, here at the Merchants and Drovers Tavern Museum here in Rahway. Thank you for this opportunity. I've been the happy pastor of what I call the greatest church in the diaspora, Ebenezer A.M.E. Church in Rahway, New Jersey, for 4 years. 4 years. My wife and I, her name is Chantel. We are so proud to be in Rahway. We have connected with the community. We have been committed to the community, and we've met so many great people in this beloved community of Rahway, and we're doing great things in the community, not just for the school, but for other areas of this diverse city of Rahway, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit.
So just how old is that building that's on Central Avenue?
Wow. Well, this old building has been here for a long time. We're gonna throw out a lot of dates for our audience in a moment. And before we get to those dates, and before we get to what I call our HGTV show circa 19th century, we need to take a step back a little bit to how all of this got started. There was a religious organization, a religious society by the name of the Quakers, and they are a great organization. They are what we call friends, literally and figuratively. They have done so many great things, not just for Ebenezer, for our school that we're going to talk about for the next hour, but they have a heart to help people, the poor, the marginalized. They had a heart to make sure that everyone got an education. They also felt that everyone had God in them. There was no distinction between black or white, or male or female, or young and old, and they had a heart to help people. So going back to 1787, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, before our denomination was established in 1816, back in 1787, the Quakers and the Free African Society, which was a mutual aid society underneath the umbrella of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, they did great work together back then, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, and educating the people, providing jobs, and providing homes for those who are homeless. And back then, the person by the name of Reverend Richard Allen and Absalom Jones, they actually worked together with the Quakers, and the Quakers actually allowed Richard Allen, Absalom Jones, and other members of our yet to be formed denomination to do great work together in the community. The Quakers would let those persons have meetings in their houses back at a time where racism was out of control, for lack of a better word. Fast forward into 1792, one of the representatives from the Quaker was just so kind, extremely kind to, I believe the correct dollar amount, was it $200 back then? $200 was probably like $200,000 in money in the year of 2022. And there was a woman, and her name was, can you recall her name? I can't think of her name right now.
Well, later on, it's Miss Lucietti.
Lucietti, yep. But there was a woman who willed $200 and wanted to make sure that education would be a priority in Rahway, and especially for people of African descent or of color. And then 1795, I believe, the Quakers, they had a school in the Rahway area. In 1795, a long time ago, education was so important to them and for all of us. Then the fast forward into 1844. 1844 was where property was established on Central Avenue. If you drive down Central Avenue, if you're driving too fast around the corner, you may miss the school that we're talking about tonight, a big red brick building that is the focus of our conversation tonight. So the vice president of our SCI.
Yeah, if you'd excuse me just for a second, could we have a slide of the map that shows where the school is located? Because folks do drive past this every day and don't really recognize its significance. So if we could get that slide up, that would be handy.
And while we're waiting for the slide to come up, 1844 was a very, very pivotal moment in history. As I mentioned earlier to some of my colleagues here at the museum, the president of that time was a gentleman by the name of John Tyler, the 10th president of the United States. Unfortunately, he was not the best of presidents, and he wasn't the most intellectual of presidents, and he was an owner of slaves. And it just showed the sign of the times back then. And back then also, a lot of lynching went on during that time. Thousands and thousands of people were lynched. And to bring things up to speed, earlier this week in the state of New Jersey, in the country, the anti-lynching bill finally was approved. It had taken more than 200 times for it to be approved. So it shows that some of the same issues that we had back then, we're having the same issues right now. And before I turn it back over to Mr. Shipley, one more historical thing that is of importance is that even today in 2022, there is an issue of desegregation when it comes to schools. Unfortunately, New Jersey is the 6th ranked state in the whole country with the top number of schools that are unfortunately segregated. And New Jersey, they're ranked 7th for Latino students that are fortunately struggling with segregation. We know that segregation in all forms, I believe, is unconstitutional, illegal, and immoral and unethical. We thank God that in Rahway we have a diverse community, and I believe that is our testimony that we are not a segregated community, but other parts of New Jersey, we really need to do better in that area. What seemed to be a problem back then with the Rahway Colored School for Children, which is now evolving into African American History and Heritage Learning Center, is still a major issue right now, unfortunately, in 2022. And finally, before I turn it back over to you, and we can go deeper in this wonderful fireside chat, Mr. Shipley, I just believe personally that it's better that we all work together, that we all learn together, that we all grow together, and being separate is not equal and it is not right.
That's right. Well, I see we can't get the map up yet, but I can tell you, if you know where the Ebenezer Church is on Central Avenue, right across the street from the former St. Mary's Church. Now, oh, here's the map here. Yes. This map is from 1882. And you can see Central Avenue running from right to left. And you might notice it says colored church, colored school. And just to the right of that, it's colored church. That would be Ebenezer. And the St. Mary's Church is across the street from there. So it's on Central just before Estabrook Avenue. And you know, you can pass this building and not even notice it. Very early on, we were just told by some of the old timers in Rahway that that was once a school. Didn't know much about it. And like so many things that this organization does, you dig into things and you find out more and more and more and more, so that by the time Ebenezer community gets a chance to buy this building, we can hand them a lot of the information that's historically accurate about it. So that's where we are. After it closed as a school, and it closed after the Rahway Public Schools became integrated, which was back in 1882. So they didn't need the separate school for the African American students. It became a private home, and we don't exactly know how many families lived in the building over the 100+ years, but when it finally was vacated in mid 2000 teens, the church, purchased the property.
Yeah.
And they started working on a project. And if you can jump into that.
Sure. Let me first thank my predecessor, a wonderful woman of God, Reverend Dr. Erica D. Crawford. This was her vision, as well as the congregation that I'm just so privileged and humbled to pastor. So back in 2025, it was their vision to buy the property and, as we say respectfully, to do something with it. One of the missions that we have for the now African American History and Heritage Learning Center is to keep, restore, preserve all of the history that we have, not just in Rahway, but throughout the diaspora, and also disseminate it for the people. There's so many things that we need to learn. There's so many things we need to be aware of. There's a rich history in Rahway. We want to open up our African American History and Heritage Learning Center to the public for tours, for workshops, for panel discussions, for critical dialogue, to talk about where we've been and where we're going. There's a whole lot of information in the Rahway Public Library that is of extreme importance, from baptisms to records of all kinds. We also want to make an impact on what I call our young scholars, all of our young people, especially those who are from African descent, respectfully, to show them, hey, this is where we come from, to build their self-esteem. We also want to make an impact. We want to have a learning center there. There's so many things. We want to have a library. I'm very passionate, for those of you who know me. I've started a Power Surge male mentoring initiative at the 7th and 8th grade academy, which hopefully, once we come through COVID-19, we'll be able to replicate on the campus of Ebenezer A.M.E. Church in Rahway, at the school, so to speak. But we need help, we need assistance, we need volunteers. We're looking for grant money. If you are interested, and we'll talk more about this in a second, if you're interested in sharing your gifts, your talents, your expertise, your graces, we'll talk about other ways for you to financially support in a little bit. as well. But we need your help. We want to make an impact in Rahway as well as the surrounding communities.
Mhm. Yes, and, personally, I'm very excited about this project, as is the entire staff of the Merchants and Drovers, because uh, we are lacking over the years. I've been doing research of getting historical information, historical artifacts from the African American community.
Mm-hmm.
Photographic materials, we just don't have them. I would love to see pictures of African American topics, families in Rahway here that date back to the early 1900s, even to the 1950s. Because I hate to say it, but that's already historical.
Yeah.
We don't have to go back too far. Pictures that were taken, 50 years ago, that's history already. And if there's a place where this material can be gathered and showcased, that would be a wonderful, wonderful thing to happen. And it could become another jewel in the buildings that we have in this town, between the museum here at the Merchants and Drovers and the Union County Arts Center downtown on Irving Street. If we can add the African American Learning Center, boy, what a great triangle that would be. So it's a great project. And I know that we started working on this with Pastor Crawford back in 2017. And unfortunately, she was sent to another church. Luckily, Pastor Robinson comes along and picks up the ball. And we've met over the summer to work on this project. And now we're here sitting, having a chat about what's going on with the building. And tell us, we could see some shots maybe of the interior and the exterior, just so that you can see what the building might look like. It's a great one room schoolhouse, basically.
And as we're getting ready to go on our HGTV tour, I just want to share to pick up where Mr. Shipley just shared with the public. We're doing a lot of parallel pathing. Now, and we hope that we're coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic as we're getting ready to have our HGTV tour, and we pray that it's an endemic. And I wanted to acknowledge and thank our board of advisors, not only Mr. Shipley, Mr. John Prescott, who is the history coordinator at the Union County Cultural Affairs. We also have Mrs. Paula Braxton. She's the former Rahway High School principal and a member of our congregation. We have Miss Pamela Parker McGee, the Christian Education Director of our church. We also have Miss Brittany Hale, Esquire. She's on the board of Ed for the city of Rahway as well. And she's also the co-chair of our Social Justice Commission. We have Professor Rick Zidane, and I know he's watching now. He is the president of the Board of Trustees here at this wonderful museum. And I hope I did not miss anybody. Those are some of our advisors, our formal advisors. We've also partnered with the Aubrey Group, just so you know, the Aubrey Group, as well as the city of Rahway under the leadership of Mayor Raymond Jacoby. They have been instrumental. The Aubrey Group is a consulting firm, and they are a professional grant writing team. So we're doing a lot. We're also trying to get on the historical register as well, but we need your help. As you look at the pictures, you see the exterior views, our HGTV view, you see the porch in the front, and it is pronounced, it's not jealousy, it is jealousy. We just learned something. That's a jealousy porch that you see in the front that we are looking to do something with. You see Mr. Shipley in the picture, also with our former pastor of Ebenezer, Reverend Dr. Erica Crawford, Miss Sylvia Davenport, Miss Geraldine Johnson, and Miss Paula Braxton. You see the interior of some of the rooms of the one-room schoolhouse. Yeah, one-room schoolhouse, but you see many rooms. That's for a whole nother conversation. You also see the front area where the fence is, the porch is, pardon me. Next slide, please, I believe. If we can go to the next slide. If we can, if not, that's okay. And then you see some of the portraits that we have. You see the white and the colored bathroom sign on the left side of the screen. You also see, if I'm not mistaken, it looks like Abraham Lincoln and others. We've also had a couple of major events over the past year on the campus of Ebenezer A.M.E. Church at the African American History and Heritage Learning Center. We had a wonderful family friends event. We had a DJ, we had food, we had historical presentations, oral presentations as well. And we had a wonderful time. A lot of people came out to the event, showed support. And we also have our annual 4 Centuries in a Weekend, which takes place on the second or third weekend in October under the extraordinary leadership of Mr. John Prescott and others. And that gives everyone an opportunity to come on by and take a tour of the school. Again, to repeat, we need your help. We're encouraging you to join us. You can call the church. You can speak to me at 732-382-0541, 732-382-0541, 732-382-0541. You can go to our church website, www.ebenezeramechurch.com, and you will see the information. You see the link on the screen. That's www.ebenezeramechurch.com. And then since we are in 2022, we have a Cash App. It is $EBNEZ Rahway. $EBNEZ Rahway. $EBNEZ Rahway, and just designate that you want whatever financial seed that you want to sow into this fertile ground. Just identify it for the African American History and Heritage Learning Center, the acronym or the initials AAHHLC.
Yeah, one thing that every time I go into the building, it reminds me of the first time that I came into this building. You're walking into a place that has changed over the years. This was a one-room schoolhouse that became someone's home. So it was divided into different rooms and had different floors put down, had different ceiling put up, different wall treatments, and all of that in the work that's going to be done on this building. Once the project gets rolling, is everything will be peeled away so that you can see what was actually back there going back to the mid-1800s. And that's the exciting part. And then reconstructing it so that you hold on to some of those, actual pieces of the building that are accurate. And doing with the building what you can to make it a modern museum.
Yes.
Pastor mentioned the jalousie porch, which everyone who comes into the building says that's got to be ripped off of there, because once that's ripped off and people see the brick front with the center doorway, it's going to open up everybody's eyes, because you're going to see an old building, which right now you kind of just is a nondescript facade. So, but that's all got to be done correctly with the help of architects and with the help of historical consultants. But that's the goal of this whole project. Okay. All righty. Well, thank you.
I thank you for this opportunity to share.
And we could open it up to questions if you would like, and hopefully you'll have some for us.
Here you go.
That's
Sorry.
okay.
I'm playing for that. Can you see the chat is kind of?
Be putting this on. Well, I can't see the questions though. Hold on. It's too dark. This one here? Here's a question. Please tell us about the beautiful murals depicting African American history that we see in the slideshow of the interior of the schoolhouse.
To the best of my knowledge, some of the exhibits that you see on the slideshow, some of them were donated by different members of Ebenezer and other wonderful persons of the Rahway community. And like I said earlier, there's a whole lot of artifacts and wonderful information and books at the Rahway Public Library. Also, in one of those pictures on our HGTV slideshow, you probably saw the president of our NAACP Rahway branch. She's to the right, Miss Quine Chambliss Palmer, and she brought a whole lot of stuff for our Family and Friends Day, as well as 4 Centuries on the weekend. So I'm sure some of the things that you saw, she had a hand in. She brought a whole lot of information. She couldn't even bring it all with her.
Yeah, and then we hope that as word gets out about this project, that more items like this are going to be put in, and hopefully one day get so many that there'll be a revolving exhibit. But
Right.
this could be a storehouse of a lot of history from the African American community, and I really hope to see a lot of good photographic material coming in. And with the technology today, you could take just a small 3x5 photograph and blow it up and, enhance it. And another question.
And I just believe, as we're waiting for the next question to come, as Mr. Shipley alluded to earlier, there's a lot of stuff in our homes. There's a lot of stuff in our houses that is worthwhile, that is historic. And we are pleading with you. We're asking if you know someone in Rahway or anywhere that has great stuff, great stuff, especially during this time period in the mid 19th century. It'll be very helpful for us.
All right, here we've got another question. In the mid 1960s, there were marches to support fair housing laws. Would you be interested in information about that time period? We sure would.
Absolutely.
I always tell people, whenever they call and say, would you be interested in anything related to this city?
Yeah.
I tell them we're interested in, whether it's just, paper information, or whether it's photographic information, or object information, whatever it is, we'll take it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. To that point, I'm also a bibliophile. I'm a lover of books. I'm the type of person, I got a hand clap over here. I'm the type of person pre-COVID, I would be in Barnes and Noble at least twice a week in my own world. With that saying, there's a book out there called The Color of Law. I don't know if you've read it, The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, and it talks a whole lot about fair housing issues, redlining, and other things that just slip my mind right now. But that book, Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, gentrification, that was the word that I was looking for. But Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. So anything, like Mr. Shipley said, historical would be great and most welcome.
We have a question from the live studio audience.
Question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
You'll have to repeat the question because they probably won't be able to hear it.
Sure.
I'm a member of the museum and I'm fascinated by all this.
Yes.
This is the first I've ever heard, after 20 years of living in Rahway,
Wow.
there was such a institute at one time here.
Wow.
And it just goes to show you that the Quakers were ahead of the curve.
Yes, they were.
Sure.
Mhm.
And I'd like to ask you a question about that, but first, I
Sure.
want to clarify, 1792, there was actually a social group that was concerned about educating poor children.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
I hope that people of color benefited from that early, and that they didn't have to wait until 1848.
Hmm.
Yeah, the question that just came from the group here, the Quakers came into Rahway, God, in the early 1700s. They were really the first religious community that set up a meeting house. We had two that were in Rahway. The first one was a smaller one on Main Street, just about at the head of Cherry Street. And then they grew and they built a new meeting house where the Rahway Savings Bank eventually went on Irving Street. That was their second house. And they were a very active group. We had the Presbyterian Church come in 1741, and then a Methodist church come in about 1810. And then the Ebenezer Church came in 1824.
Yeah.
So those were kind of the four, very early churches. But the Quakers have always had a history of, being fair-minded, being lovers of education.
That's right.
And they were the ones responsible for making sure that that every person of need was taken care of. And they helped to construct, they gave the property, the property was owned by a Quaker, Mr. Shotwell, and they built the building right on his property.
Reverend,
Yes.
now I understood that as early as the 1740s, Quakers were abolitionists.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
In terms of doctrine and Protestantism, where did that come from? Where on earth did it come from?
Well.
How did the Quakers forge ahead? Where did that come from in their doctrine?
Well, before I get to the doctrine, before we take you to seminary just for a moment, I just want to piggyback just briefly on what Mr. Shipley said. The Quakers were so awesome, so godly, so spiritual. They had such a pure heart. They even paid for the expenses, right? All the expenses of the principal there, Miss Putnam, and others as well during that time. But to answer your question, I don't think it was about doctrine for them at the time. That wasn't the priority. There's a theologian by the name of Howard Thurman, and he's written so many books. One's called Jesus of the Disinherited. My point to you, to answer your question, I think it was about a head and heart perspective, if you understand what I'm saying practically. The head part is more doctrine. When we get that, that's important. But I think just looking at their history and looking at their impact on the school back then and even now, they had such a heart, if you understand where I'm going, that took them way past doctrine. They just knew this is the right thing to do, right? This is a godly thing to do, and I'm led to do it. And that's a spirit-driven thing. That's a faith walk, to answer your question, more so than what's in the Bible or the paper or books, which is also very important.
Very good. Well said. That's a good answer. That's
Thank
a
you.
good answer, because all of the groups, the religious groups, deep down they are based on wanting to help people.
Yeah.
But the Quakers went out and did it. So, another question. Very good.
It's not really a question, it's just a comment.
A comment. Okay.
I read it anyway. Okay.
It would be great to find any descendants of the
Yeah.
children who attended the school and get oral histories.
Yeah.
Well, we need Mr. Gates from Channel 13 to hunt for something like
Yeah,
that.
right.
I mean, you've got to be very lucky.
He'll track
And,
everything down.
Yeah, and you know, the program Finding Your Roots
That's it.
astounds people with what they find, but they probably have a staff of about 25 people and a budget of you know, millions. So yeah, that's something we'd have to be very lucky
Yeah.
if we found anything like that. But who knows? It's possible.
Do you know anyone now who is a descendant of, like, anyone in Rahway?
I don't
No.
believe so. But prayerfully, forums like this, opportunities,
Yeah.
provides exposure, and it just takes one person to
Sure.
hear, right? To get wind of it. And hopefully that will just be the
And a lot of years have passed. You know, it's like saying, do we know any descendants from the original Rahway High School from
Right.
1874? You know, it's possible, but you know, you'd have to turn over a lot of stones to begin that search. You know,
Are there records of attendance, like names, any kinds of?
again, you're going to have to start searching.
I don't know if you had anything.
Then there'll be a lot of dead ends. You know, it's like family. You know, we do a lot of family genealogy here in the building, and that's something again that the African American Heritage Museum will hope to do too. Sit down with some folks and trace back genealogies. But that's you know, they're giant jigsaw puzzles, and you hit more roadblocks than, you know, highways. You know, so
hopefully we get to a place where we can at least identify those approximately 30 students who were students at the time. That would be a
they
good
say there
start.
were as many as 30 who
Right.
might have been there. And,
Anywhere from
but who
the
knows?
pre-K to sixth grade area.
you know,
for the reading and writing.
today we have so many ways to you know, catalog information. Back then you wrote it on paper, and who knows what happened to a piece of paper. I mean, people always ask, do we have any registers of hotel guests who were in this place? And no, we don't. They were thrown out probably after they were filled in. They were thrown out, you know. So it's a tough but exciting project, doing any kind of historic research.
I think with anything, just generally speaking, it takes time.
Oh,
It
yeah.
takes time, and I think history and uncovering history and things of
Sure.
importance, it just takes time, and it'll happen.
Yeah.
We keep moving forward.
But then
and,
again,
we'll
this
find
is
more
the
things.
exciting part about this museum is the fact that we're going to be tapping into a group that has not been tapped into.
That's right.
That's the exciting part.
There's one more comment. An excellent interview with great information.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you should read that one.
Okay, here's a
Thank
comment.
you.
Let's see. That's a great idea. Oh, this one. Okay. Oh, boy, this one. Excellent interview with great information. Pastor Robinson is amazing.
Oh,
Signed, his loving wife.
yay! Yay! That's all right.
All righty.
Any other
Right
questions?
here, Good Morning America.
Good morning, America.
Oh, wait a minute, there is something there.
There is another one. Good boy.
Okay, there's one.
I'm happy everybody likes this. Which? The bottom one. Okay. Do you have any information about a separate section of Rahway Cemetery being used for African American citizens of Rahway? This is a rumor I have heard. Well, you heard correctly.
Uh-oh.
There sure is. And, you know, I don't know if you call this luck or a bit of providence or what, but a lot of the records of the cemetery, we don't have any longer. I've never seen a bunch of them, plot layouts and things. But in what they call the Potter's Field section, the back of the cemetery, we have the markings of every grave that's back there. And that's how we were able to start to figure out the members of the United States colored troops who fought during the Civil War. We were just lucky to find those maps. If we didn't find those maps, we wouldn't know anything about that section. So we certainly do. And if you want to, contact the museum, I'd be happy to take you back there and, show you everyone's grave and what their names are. And the problem with, most Potter fields, there's no headstones. People didn't have money to buy headstones, so you'd bury a family member, put a wooden cross on the grave, and in time, the wooden crosses fall over, they get raked up, and before you know it, you have what looks like a barren field. And there's all graves in there. And we know who they are and where they are.
And that sounds similar to what happened at the Tulsa massacre in
That's right.
1921 with those graves and those horror stories, for lack of a better word. And they had to do a major excavation, unfortunately, to try to find out who was there.
Every now and again, you'll hear, a construction site has to be stopped, even in like New York City, because they start to dig and all of a sudden they hit bodies. Well, those are all grave sites of folks who were buried with just crosses. Just
if that,
crosses.
If that.
And they were burial grounds, but in time they're gone.
Can you just talk for like a couple minutes about what the U.S. Color Troopers were, in case the people who are in the chat don't know?
The U.S. Colored Troopers, sure. After the first year of the war, President Lincoln realized that there was a large group of manpower that could be used to help win this war. We weren't doing too well the first year, and Congress passed the law that African-American men could enlist. And many of them had menial jobs, but the ones who actually engaged in groups that did some heavy fighting, they were wonderful soldiers. In fact, we've got 3 members, and we have 29 members of the United States Colored Troops buried in our Rahway Cemetery. 3 of them were members of one of the companies that was the second highest percentage of medals that were given out. The Glory Group, the one that the movie was made for, that's the highest medal winning group. But this was the second highest. It was the 22nd, New Jersey.
Wow.
Yeah. So we had 3 of their members there.
And the Mackey Post celebrates it every year.
And the Mackey Post has a ceremony the 3rd Saturday every July, where they have a gathering, about 100 people of American Legion, VFW folks who come up and have speeches and all kinds of good things to commemorate their service.
We have another comment of somebody actually providing information.
Which one is this now? Okay, having owned and lived in the house for 20 years, I believe that it was actually 3 rooms when built and not a single room. Okay. Well, you've got to come up and we've got to meet you and see what we can gather, because now is the point where you want to be as accurate as possible with everything that you do, especially when you renovate something.
Please call 732-382-3333. 0541, 732-382-0541, 732-382-0541. Please leave a detailed message and I will surely give you a call back. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank Pastor Robinson
Thank
for
you
joining
again.
us.
Thank you again. Thank you
Good
again.
luck with the project.
Thank you again. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.